Major publishing companies dominated the Victorian publishing market, just like our university presses and multinational publishers control today's market. Small publishing companies existed, and societies often distributed their own material, but the major players come up time and time again. A researcher does not have to look hard to find a title published or distributed by Castles, Blackwoods, or Longmans, for example. It must be noted that these companies were often controlled by major families. These families started their own publications, competed against each other, built mini-monopolies, and became household names. The Bell family was no different. The Bells were a powerful family in the British publishing world for most of the 19th century. The family's history in British publishing begins with John Bell. John, like many of the other top publishers of the time, was a London printer and bookseller. Based in the Strand, he was an agent for the Prince of Wales in the 1780s, and he eventually did work for the Edinburgh-based Apollo Press. John's success came quickly. He jumped into competition against 40 other publishers, which held a monopoly in the London market. Here he found success. He helped to distribute a series called The Poets of Great Britain, which was followed by new editions of Shakespeare and a 21-volume series on the British theatre. The inexpensive, pocket-sized format was hugely successful. This success coincided with the growing success of the Morning Post, which he helped to found. The Morning Post had achieved a daily circulation of 2,000 by 1783. It appealed to aristocrats, Tories, and high church supporters, and it quickly became the leading Tory newspaper in the region. Although Bell sold his shares in the paper in 1786, he helped to develop a publication which would last several reforms, political changes, and social crises. By 1900, it was the longest-running publication in the Greater London area. Bell's publishing ventures continued when he began the World with Edward Topham. As Clarke explains, the publication quickly proved that it was, quote, vastly superior in type and layout than anything that had gone before, and it soon became the authority on taste and fashion. Eventually, Bell and Topham fell out, and Topham took control of the publication in 1789, turning it into an organ to blackmail prominent people such as the Prince of Wales. John Bell did not rest on his laurels, however. He quickly started a newspaper called The Oracle, and it's here that we see the Bell family name become a brand. Subtitled Bell's New World, in direct opposition to what was now Topham's publication, it is obvious that the Bell name carried weight in the London market. Even if it hadn't achieved this status by this point, there was a strong effort to make Bell's a household name. The Oracle appears to be in direct competition with the World. From the subtitle indicating that it was, quote, Bell's New World, it is obvious that Bell was both trying to establish the publication based on his reputation and also to prove that the Bell name was more marketable than Topham. Topham's publication blackmailed the Prince of Wales who, despite effort to purchase the publication, struggled to get Topham to back down. Instead, as Aspinall writes, the Prince subsidized Bell's Oracle. This subsidy was probably a good thing too, since the Oracle was not self-sufficient at first. Cranfield asserts that the paper could make a profit based on 1,700 daily sales, which was not extraordinary, but a government subsidy certainly helped. Over time, political profits and advertising profits allowed the publication to grow. John Bell's tenure with the publication seems to have ended around 1796, but the title persisted until 1809 under Peter Stewart's guidance. Later, Bell's Weekly Messenger saw Bell's name integrated directly into the title. The publication, which began in 1796, revolutionized the Sunday paper. It focused on reviews and on agriculture primarily, appealing to a large conservative market. It denounced radical movements, and although it is characterized as an agricultural journal, Bernard Cook clarifies that it was not intended as this type of paper originally. Its price of 7.5 certainly designated it as a paper for wealthier readers, particularly those from the country. Nevertheless, it grew into a prominent agricultural publication which maintained a high circulation beyond 1870 despite ever-increasing competition. This publication continued into the 20th century before ending in 1904. As Muscle explains, the Bell's name became an important signifier in the market. For example, Robert Bell, an Irish barrister, began the Weekly Dispatch in 1795, and another Robert Bell, unrelated, began life in London in 1822. Both titles were preceded by the Bell name, making them Bell's Weekly Dispatch and Bell's Life in London, respectively. John Bell's success in the publishing industry was not uninterrupted. He was charged for libel once that we know of. He declared bankruptcy twice, once in 1793 and once in 1797, but he always overcame these issues. His peers, such as Charles Knight, held him in some esteem. Knight dubbed him the Puck of the publishing industry, which has been repeated widely in modern scholarship. He was known for making great advances in the design of periodicals, despite also being known for making cheap editions affordable for many people. An intriguing fact about John Bell is that he is widely believed to have eliminated the long S from publishing practices. Publications until the 18th century contained the long S, but its use was minimal in the 19th century. As Barker explains, John is credited with introducing the modern face of publishing in part for eliminating the long S, but also for his many other innovations with typography and publication design. Paradoxically, many of Bell's major publications appealed to the upper classes. He produced cheap editions, but he published serials for an entirely different market, spreading his influence across class and demographics. The Morning Post appealed to the upper classes, and the Prince of Wales's involvement with the Oracle and the World suggests that they too appealed to a more distinguished audience. A final publication of note, La Belle Assemblée, did not break this mold. Instead, it expanded its influence by appealing to an emerging women's market. It was a magazine of high fashion containing elaborate costume and clothing illustrations, according to Kathryn Ledbetter. It gave women's fashion a space in publishing by giving them a variety and quality that they desired. It achieved a remarkable following and exerted a strong cultural influence in its desired market. Bell was clearly the publication's heart and soul. His ability to create and break from tradition enabled him to not only enter into the emerging market, but to drive that market with typographical and design innovations. As Alison and Adburgham explains, quote, John Bell's great talents were employed at their best in raising the standard of typography, illustration, and layout of periodical publishing. This is what made him of such importance in the history of magazines, and what made his beautiful periodical La Belle Assemblée such a landmark. By the time John died in 1831, 10 years after his retirement, the Bell's name was an enduring brand in the British publishing market. John's success popularized his family's place in the industry and opened doors for generations of Bells to participate. His son, John Brown Bell, capitalized on the family name even while his father was publishing. The father and son were not on good terms, as Mussel explains, with the elder Bell supposedly marrying to disinherit his son. Regardless of these attempts, it's clear that the family name carried weight no matter who was publishing. John Brown made many attempts to start publications to oppose his father's titles. The first title that he launched was Le Beau Monde in 1806. It was a magazine of fashion issued to directly counter La Belle Assemblée. John Brown copied his father's format so closely that Adburgham explains newsagents were able to substitute one title for another on their shelves. Le Beau Monde never achieved the same level of success as its counterpart, but it too was established and too dominant. By the time they ended the publication, John Brown Bell and his publishing partner John Camp were bankrupt. Once John Brown was formally disinherited upon his father's death in 1831, he started a publication to rival Bell's Weekly Messenger called Bell's New Weekly Messenger. Evidently, creativity was less a priority than capitalizing on the family name. It operated as a Sunday paper and was framed as a family newspaper. However, it covers murders, crimes, and a host of other unsavory topics which would contradict his father's philosophy of peaceful publication. John Brown Bell cannot be discussed without mentioning the News of the World, which was his primary success. Started in 1843, the paper appealed to the masses. It condensed the weekly news into a palatable format, covering everything from groceries to markets to sporting to crime to wars and even a bit of literature. Throughout the 19th century and beyond, it was extremely dexterous, showing remarkable ability to adapt to changing public opinion. It maintained a strong circulation until 1861. At this point, many publishers were reducing their prices to 1 pence, but the News of the World maintained its price. The paper had the largest circulation in the world around this time, but the higher price diminished its value. Management made many attempts to increase its circulation without a price change, but its influence decreased nevertheless. Despite this dip, it remained a key player in the market, and by the 1950s it had regained its prominence when it peaked at a circulation of 8.4 million. It would continue in 2011. The News of the World remained a Bell family business into the 1890s, when the news world shifted again. John Brown Bell's tenure ended in 1855, when John William Bell took over. John William managed the publication until 1877, when his son, Adolphus William Bell, managed the publication from 1877 until 1891. This is when the News of the World officially stopped being a Bell family publication. Henry Carr took over at this time, which began another long period of time in which the News of the World was a family business. Henry's tenure lasted until 1902, when Emsley Carr took over and operated the title until 1941. The last known proprietor of the publication was Rupert Murdoch, who bought the title in 1969. He operated until 2011, when it had to close due to scandal. But all of this success stems from one very important family. The Bell family were prominent influences in the British publishing market for over a century, and their creations persisted for over a century more. They inadvertently established a family business despite huge familial divides. Their name became a publishing brand that was trusted, admired, and imitated throughout the British Isles and beyond. The Bells set trends, broke tradition, and navigated different audiences with ease. The empire that they built, albeit disparately, continues to be discussed in popular culture today, even if many people no longer recognize the Bells as the primary agents behind the news of the world. It would have been impossible for John Bell to predict that his little book-selling business on the Strand would grow into something that would last centuries. It nevertheless did, and it touched generations upon generations of readers who are unlikely to forget its influence anytime soon. Thanks for listening.